Imagine a time when the streets of Jerusalem were filled with joyful songs, the air rich with the aroma of freshly baked bread, and families came together under makeshift tents to celebrate the faithfulness of God. This is the Feast of Tabernacles, also known as Sukkot, one of the most significant and joyous feasts for the people of Israel. But what is the Feast of Tabernacles all about? Why was it commanded by God? And what can we learn from it today? Join me as we explore the meaning, the origins, and the enduring lessons of the Feast of Tabernacles, a celebration that reminds us of God's incredible provision and the power of unity. Stick around until the end, where we'll talk about how the lessons of Sukkot can help us grow in faith and gratitude in our everyday lives. The Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot, is one of the three major festivals that God commanded the Israelites to observe. It is a time to celebrate the end of the harvest season and to remember how God provided for His people during their 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. Leviticus 23:42. 43 says, "Live in temporary shelters for 7 days. All native-born Israelites are to live in such shelters, so your descendants will know that I had the Israelites live in temporary shelters when I brought them out of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." God's command was more than a ritual. It was a way to remind His people that everything they had, their homes, their harvest, and their very lives, came from His generous hand. The sukkah, or temporary dwelling, was a symbol of trust in God's provision. By living in these shelters, the Israelites acknowledged that God was their ultimate protector and provider. Imagine what it must have been like for the Israelites, wandering in the wilderness. No permanent homes, no fields to plant, no assurance of tomorrow's meal. Just an entire nation relying on God each day for food, water, and direction. The Feast of Tabernacles is rooted in this journey. It is about remembering those 40 years when God provided manna from heaven and led His people by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Deuteronomy 8:15-16 reminds us, "He led you through the vast and dreadful wilderness, that thirsty and waterless land, with its venomous snakes and scorpions. He brought you water out of hard rock. He gave you manna to eat in the wilderness, something your ancestors had never known, to humble and test you, so that in the end, it might go well with you." The message of the wilderness is clear. God is not just the God of abundance, but also the God of sufficiency. He gives us enough, and He walks with us even through the driest seasons of our lives. The Feast of Tabernacles is not a somber ritual. It's a time of great joy. It's about celebrating the harvest and recognizing the blessings God has provided throughout the year. For 7 days, the people of Israel gather together, build their sukkahs, and celebrate with feasting, singing, and dancing. In Zechariah 14:16, we read about a future time when all nations will come to Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. Then the survivors from all the nations that have attacked Jerusalem will go up year after year to worship the King, the Lord Almighty, and to celebrate the Festival of Tabernacles. God's vision for the feast extends beyond Israel. It's a celebration for all people. It's an invitation to come together in unity, to remember God's faithfulness, and to rejoice in His abundant blessings. During His time on earth, Jesus Himself participated in the Feast of Tabernacles. In John 7, we read about Jesus going to the temple during the feast, and it was on the last day, the greatest day of the feast, that He stood and said, with a loud voice, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as Scripture has said, rivers of living water will flow from within them." John 7:37-38. Jesus used this moment, a time when people were commemorating God's provision of water in the desert, to reveal that He is the source of living water. He was inviting all who were spiritually thirsty to come to Him for true satisfaction. The Feast of Tabernacles points us to Jesus, the ultimate fulfillment of God's promise to dwell with His people. The Feast of Tabernacles is more than an ancient celebration. It's a reminder for us today. Life is full of wilderness seasons, times of uncertainty, times when we feel vulnerable, and times when we don't know what the future holds. But just like the Israelites, we are invited to trust in God's provision, to build our own sukkahs, spaces of faith where we acknowledge that God is our shelter and our provider. Psalm 91:1-2 reminds us, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust." Just as the Israelites built temporary dwellings, we are called to live with open hands, knowing that our security is not in the things we build or accumulate, but in the God who provides. We may not live in physical sukkahs, but we are called to dwell in God's presence, trusting Him for every need. So, as you look at your life today, where do you need to trust God more? What sukkah can you build as a reminder of God's faithfulness? Maybe it's taking a step of faith. Maybe it's letting go of worry. Or maybe it's celebrating the small blessings He provides every day. The Feast of Tabernacles is a powerful reminder of God's provision, His presence, and the joy of trusting in Him. Let's choose to live with gratitude, to celebrate God's goodness, and to build our lives on the foundation of His love. If this message inspired you today, take a moment to share it with someone who needs encouragement. And remember, God is your shelter, your provider, and He will never fail you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss more inspiring content like this. And let us know in the comments, what are you grateful for today? Let's build a community of gratitude and faith together. God bless, and see you next time. May the blessings of Sukkot fill your heart with joy and hope. Until next time, keep your heart open to the wonders of God's faithfulness.